welcome back everyone, it is me again, Matsimus, and thank you for being here. We're discussing weapons platforms and the machine gun particularly because, unfortunately, I found out some news about the British Army getting rid of a few weapons platforms. Now this isn't, I guess, new news, it's been around for quite some time, it's nothing new, but a lot of people have been asking me to talk about this machine gun and other machine guns and weapons platforms that are being removed from the British Army. Now, it does make sense for me to discuss this machine gun a little bit for the fact that I have used it quite extensively within the British Army and still to this day use it within my current service. Now, the machine gun, otherwise known as the, well, Minimi, or the FN Minimi, has been used by the British Army for quite some time. It is not a platform that I would say is, the most, well, ammo conserving, but it is a hell of a lot of fun to use. Now, using weapons platforms isn't always about being fun, it's about actually being practical. And unfortunately, the British Army deemed that it is not practical to have this machine gun in section support anymore, and there's a few reasons behind it. And before we go any further, though, let's reminisce on when I first saw this machine gun in action on TV as a kid. It was a childhood movie, and I absolutely fell in love with the machine gun. I was like, oh my god, I would love to play with this thing. Let's just take a little walk down memory lane and have a quick look at the cutscene of this machine gun being used in said movie.
Stand your ground! Stand your ground! Stand your ground! Stand your ground!
And unfortunately, that is the stoppage for the machine gun in both the movie and in today's military usage. Now, the British military is in quite a transitional phase right now. It's trying its best to reduce cost, reduce weight, create a more leaner soldier, and the equipment that goes along with him follows that same principle. And unfortunately, the LMG really just doesn't fit quite into that parameter. The famously nicknamed Minimi, or FN Minimi, was also designated as the L110A1, and the machine gun has been used by the British Army successfully for quite some time, to be honest with you. In Afghanistan, it was definitely used very heavily whilst I was on deployment, and a lot of people say that it should not be removed, and I can sort of agree, but I can also sort of disagree. Now, there are other weapons platforms that are being removed from the British Army too. The LSW, which is basically an L85A2 with a longer barrel, bipod, butt plate, and really, that's about it. It's a kind of redundant weapons platform. I've wanted to do a video about that actual firearm for quite some time, and maybe in the future I will. But that is definitely needing to go. It is not required in the British Army anymore. It's not really a support weapon. It's not doing anything much more different than what the L85 can do nowadays. And with the beautiful L129A1 Sharpshooter rifle coming into play, it's really starting to take away the edge that the LMG had. Now, the LMG is a 5.56mm belt-fed machine gun. It can be interchangeable with longer or shorter barrels to increase range and accuracy, but in terms of pure accuracy for this thing, you're only looking at about 200 to 300 meters, and when I say accuracy, I mean pinpointing rounds onto paper or onto a target with defined accuracy, meaning where you shoot, you hit. Unfortunately, the machine gun really is designed more of a support role, which means you use it as a suppressive weapon. You put as many rounds down as you can at long range and keep the enemy's head down. In Afghanistan, it worked perfectly, and this scene will definitely go to show exactly why it works perfectly, because these gentlemen require as much fire down range to keep the enemy's head down. So as you can see, suppression really is very important when you're in sort of a far built-up area where you're getting literally hammered or pinned down by suppressive fire. The irony is, in that video, the 60mm mortar is also being removed, and that was actually being fired in that footage as well. Now, to really get down to the root cause as to why they don't want these weapon systems anymore, including the LSW and the mortar, I found a rather interesting news story that kind of goes a little bit more in depth as to the reasons why, and for the most part, it's the same things I'm mentioning: weight, reducing the carrying of the soldier to make them more lean.
In service now, that's why it's been removed from the platoon weapons mix.
Absent, though, the LMG, Light Machine Gun.
The light machine gun was procured for a very specific environment, and we found that in the environment we're now facing ourselves, or using it in, that the range it reaches out to, 250, 300 metres accurately, is just not far enough. And we can achieve the same terminal effect on the enemy using our rifles. So using 1-2 rounds as opposed to firing bursts of 3, 4 or 5 rounds. So it's a more efficient, it reduces the weight. And the burden on the soldier.
And that's at the heart of everything, freeing up the soldier, making them more able, more efficient.
Yeah, so we're constantly trying to shave just grams off of our weapon systems, off the kit we carry. So there's one way of doing it, which is to carry one battery, perhaps for all the kit that's on your body or on your weapon or on your helmet. So we're looking in those areas.
Just a couple of examples of the changes being made, and there are scores more in development. And while kit is important, the team here stress it's people that matter most, and they want to get the kit mix right to the benefit of the fighting soldier.
So there you have it. Simply put, they are trying to reduce the overall burden onto the soldier, but I really don't feel that the LMG is that much of a burden. I feel like it is definitely a game changer when it comes to having to put a ton of firepower down when necessary. Of course, having to carry that extra belt can be a bit of a pain in the butt. Now, the justification for the review is because there's an existing variety of weapon systems to use within rifle platoons. Currently, each British Army infantry fire team is equipped with one L110A3 assault rifle which is fitted with an underslung grenade launcher. It is also given the L129A1, which is a 7.62 by 51mm sharpshooter rifle, which is giving you a lot more reach than the LMG would in terms of accuracy, and they're really wanting to save that ammunition being put down range that you're really going to waste to hit the target with more accurate firepower. Each rifle platoon was also supported with an M6640 60mm mortar. However, it was reported that due to the way it had been operated, the firers were really only achieving 3% of first round hits on target. The most important and underlying tone to what I'm trying to say is that the weapon systems the military chooses are reflective of the deployment and the theory in which the military is operating it in. The weapon system has to fit the job that the army wants its troops to accomplish. For the British Army right now, it's just not really up to the par. In this particular case, we see yet another modern military branch after the US Marine Corps looking into dropping its belt-fed smaller weapon systems in favour of more accurate suppressive fire. This change was quite dramatic and painful for the US Marine Corps with the adoption of the M27 and regulating of the M249 SAW, a true machine gunner's role of weapons platoons in line companies. However, it's just like the British, the change is reflective of the environments that they're finding themselves fighting in. In Helmand Province, as the British did, the US Marines also saw a large amount of this weapon system being used in environments that they were being engaged in. And they weren't in the 300 meter mark, they were in the 50 to 100 meter mark being engaged at. However, on the opposite end of the scale, and more true I would say to the experiences that I had seen, Taliban were using PKMs at ranges up to about 1,000 meters away. And in that environment, the M249 lost most of its advantage in terms of suppression. And the same thing applies to the LMG, which is why, up to 600 meters, it's quite redundant being a weapons platform. The light machine gun wasn't as accurate in designated marksman's rifles could have been, and because of this, it's really only an area fire weapon system, and the army just doesn't want that anymore. They want to have true, accurate firepower that can be put onto target without having to waste a ton of ammunition to get there. Of course, I think a large portion of it could be to the fact that, they've already bought a lot of new weapon systems, and of course they want to utilize them more than weapon systems that they already have, because they want to try and make sure they make the biggest bang for the buck. Unfortunately, for an infantry squad, if you're in the British Army and you're losing these weapon systems, you're probably going to be a little upset, and I don't blame you. It was the same with the M27 for the American military. A lot of people were rather upset when they lost certain accesses to the M249 SAW machine gun. But it is what it is, folks, and it's something that I'm sure we're going to see a lot more of with older platforms, or even some newer weapon systems. We may see changed out vehicles, machine guns, rifles, whatever it may be. We're going to start seeing a lot of transition for the future modern armies for the battlefield, and I am a little nervous as to see what's going to go on the chopping block next, but it makes things interesting at least. So I just want to make it very clear that this video is purely for informative and educational purposes only, to give those who are not aware of this decision being made that it is in the process. I am not a subject matter expert when it comes to decisions being made from any military in the world, and my opinion is purely subjective to my own personal thoughts and not to that of anyone else or any other organisation. I would personally love to see the LMG stay in service, but of course we do have to stay with the times. It's nice to see that the British Army is looking into trying to make a leaner soldier, and especially with the comment where previously in the video it said that they're looking at the people first. That's key, and that's really important, and it's nice to hear from senior officials and senior members of the military saying that they want to look after the troops and the equipment that they're choosing. That's awesome. Folks, if you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate you leave me a comment, leave me a like. If you want to be notified of any upcoming videos, click the little bell button by the subscribe button. If you wish to support my channel, go check out my Patreon page. It is in the description box below. Just check out the link. And also there is my merchandise store. Yes, I'm selling t-shirts, so you can also go check that out too. Thank you so much for joining me today and have a wonderful day. All the best. Bye-bye.